Okay, Itamaksistiko, good day. It is the afternoon of Tuesday, February 15th, 2017, in the lunar cycle Okonokisto Tsitsiitspi. And I'm out here at the Elizabeth Hall Wetlands area that I call Sspopiikimi, or Turtle Waters in Blackfoot. I came out this afternoon to look for a couple of things. I was hoping to see a Sora rail, and I was hoping to see some fledgling Swenson's hawks, both of whom were here about a week ago when I visited without my camera. And it's not that I think the important thing when you're out here is to get a photograph, right? I don't know, like myself, I kind of see the people who are interested in nature as fallen into two camps. They're the kind of the nature watchers, the bird watchers, the photographers, that to me strike me much more as kind of collectors. And then there's the learners and the engagers and the people that want to be part of the environment and really kind of learn the ecology and stuff. And I think, you know, myself, obviously, I feel like I fall into the latter half more, but I definitely will, I do enjoy taking a good photograph once in a while. And so if there's things going on here that I don't see too often, like I haven't seen too many Sora rails out here, even though there's a little interpretive sign that says they're out here all the time. I spent a lot of time in the last 14 years out here, and I've seen very few Sora rails, so to see one last week was a little bit of a thrill. Seeing the fledgling hawks is nothing new, but I always like to take photographs of them at this time of year because they're so approachable. They don't really know to fear humans so much. Anyway, neither of them showed up, right? Neither of them showed up, but there are cool things going on out here, of course, other than that, right? So what's going on today, and it typically happens like really a little bit further toward the end of summer. We're early this year, and it's because it's a dry year. What's happening today is there's a great blue heron out here who's fishing. I photographed him a little bit, and I'll show you some of those photos. And there's a lot of lesser yellowlegs. Lesser yellowlegs showed up here a couple of weeks ago. They started to show up here, but today they're in significant numbers. So that's a couple of things going on, like right on the water. I also took some photographs of insects visiting the gumweed. In one of my previous videos from about a week ago, I talked about the gumweed, Uxbee, cough medicine, and I showed some of the wasps and bees that were visiting that plant and its flowers. Today I noticed that there's some new visitors, bee flies, a couple of different species of bee flies, so I got photos of them as well. I went up and visited the Yucca again to see what's going on. Nothing has changed in terms of the wasp and ant visitors up there, but I wanted to go up there because I thought, you know, over the week it's kind of bugged me that if they're enjoying that nectar, why didn't I give it a shot, right? So I decided to go ahead and take a little nibble, and I got some video of that. All right, I'm back at the Yucca, and you know, over the week or so since I visited and photographed some of the different wasps and ants that are biting the fruits of the yucca and feeding off the nectar, over that week I got pretty curious, like I wonder what it tastes like. So I decided today I would just take a little nibble off of one of these yucca seed pods and see for myself what the big deal is about, right? I'll try to find one where the ants aren't going to attack me for it. There probably doesn't exist one of that kind because they're all kind of claimed by these guys. Well, it's pretty bland, actually. Doesn't have much of a... It's a little bit of a flavor to it that you get kind of as an after flavor, maybe. Yeah, it's an odd taste. Leaves you with an odd taste. Not terrible, but not great either. Kind of reminds me something of like maybe like a pepper that I don't really care for that much. All right, well that's that experiment. So there's those things, and then as I was coming down here to the duck blind area here, where you can look out over the marsh and watch wildlife without them getting so spooked. I saw something along the trail that got me curious, and I'm going to show you that. I'm sure 100,000 people, not 100,000, but maybe 100, possibly a few hundred people walk this trail every week and miss this. However, if you're paying attention, there's these holes. Okay, see these kind of rodent hole here looking thing, and then some fragments of some white stuff around it. And my first thought when I first saw it from kind of a distance walking up on it, I thought it looked like maybe something had eaten a crawdad there. You see here some more white stuff on the ground, and another hole here, right? So when you really get down and investigate that white stuff and say, what are you? What I find is that it's a very thin thing. It's almost like a bark, but it's not a bark. I know what it is. This is an eggshell from a reptile egg, right? And yeah, here's another bit of one from a reptile egg. So yeah, so these holes are spitting out bits of reptile egg. I wonder why. Could it be that something recently hatched here? My thinking, well, there's only two options really of who it is. It's either the painted turtles, and this debris has been like this on the ground for a full season and I haven't noticed it, even though I've passed it by many times. Unlikely. The other option is that this is the skin of the egg shell of a bull snake. And as we've seen in a couple of my previous videos this week, right now is the time when the snakes are being born, the neonates, the newborns of the year. Yeah, snakes are being born, and so my guess is that was a couple of batches of bull snake eggs, maybe left in reptile, or not reptile, rodent holes of some sort, and that they've hatched. The snakes moved out, and as they moved out, they dragged the egg fragments with them. Why I don't think that it's turtle shell is either I would have had to miss it all season, which is, again, it seems to me very unlikely that I missed that, because I'm out here every Sunday morning with students leading walking talks and looking for what's new. So I doubt that I missed it, right? It would have had to come like way early in the season, because the turtle eggs that were laid this year, even though they might be hatching right now, are the baby turtles are going to stay underground. They're not going to come up and go into the pond until after the winter thaw, right? So they're going to spend their first year in that nest cavity, or their first winter right in that nest cavity. So, okay, so that's why I think it's not turtle shells. The only other way that it could be turtle shells, and you know, there is a part of me that, like, you know, is saying, come on, guy, the obvious thing is that you're at the edge of the pond, so it's probably turtle shells. Okay, it's a possibility that it is. If it is, what I think that means is that something dug up those turtle nests and raided them. Okay, I know we've got long-tail weasels and short-tail weasels here, and others that might do that. So that's another possibility. And I'm definitely not taking that off the board. But there is a pocket of bull snakes, a little population here at the Elizabeth Hall Wetlands. So I don't know, but it's one or the other. It's either bull snakes or it's turtles, and if it's turtles, I think it's turtle nests that have been raided. Speaking of reptiles, while out here, I also stopped at the local rattlesnake den, and to see what was going on there, whether the snakes were actually returning to the den, and they were. There were several snakes there on site. It's hard to tell because it's a little complex. They may have a rookery right there on site, and that's why there's neonates there already. It could just be that's going on, but really, if it is, the den is so close anyway that they're both right there. So yeah, I saw several adult snakes and several neonates, and set the camera down there for a little bit to get a little footage. Other things that are going on out here that I'm noticing, getting a bit more leaf coloration change in the cottonwood trees. There's still catbirds here, and I saw a catbird mama, or it could be a dad, I don't know, bringing a little what would you call it, like a caterpillar of some sort out of the marsh, and flying it over to the area where they must have some hatchlings. I didn't stick around because they noticed I was watching them right away, and there's no way they would go to the nest unless I really forced them, unless I just sat around and waited, and they were like, oh, I got to get this to the baby. So, but I didn't want to be such an intruder, so just noted that the catbird was doing that, which means that they have still catbird hatchlings out here right now. I think most of the birds have gone through at least one, probably two broods. Most of the smaller passerine, the perching birds, robins and tree sparrows and or tree swallows and all the I don't know if the yellow warblers would do two broods in a season. I kind of don't think so, but I know a lot of the littler birds, starlings of course and such, have probably had their two broods already and are done. So I think the late ones are the catbirds and maybe some of the cedar waxwings. Chokecherries are becoming ripe, and that's to be expected. We're only about a week away from the beginning of the lunar cycle that's named after their ripening. And so I harvested a few chokecherries and took a little video of that. Well, even though we're a week or so away from the lunar cycle that's named after the ripening of the chokecherries, it's been a very dry summer, so things are speeding along. I noticed that some of them, at least, not all of them, but this particular tree, the cherries are pretty much ripe. Hey, I barely have to touch them. They're falling off of the stems, and when I eat them, they've got a sweetness about them. I mean, they still got that, also that kind of tannicky taste to them as well. But they always have that when you eat them in this form. And I figure they must be a good time to harvest because the beavers are harvesting. Right here, there's evidence that a beaver took 1-2 whole chokecherry trees from this site, probably within the last few days. One of them was pretty big, like a good tree. It must have been full of berries, so the beavers are having a good time with these chokecherries. So if they're judging there in season, I'm going to judge there in season, and I'm going to harvest some right now and show you how to prepare them in the Blackfoot traditional style, how to prepare them and how to preserve them as well. Someone was asking me the other week if I might put a video up regarding ethics around harvesting wild plants, and I think I'd like to do that as a separate video. But I know the concern was that, you know, I'd shown the location of a rare plant, the yucca, and there was a concern that somebody might go out there and try to harvest the yucca seeds and that kind of thing, or do something, or even take a plant, who knows. Hopefully that's not the case. I mean, a real obvious harvesting ethic is going to be you don't take what's not abundant. Right? You let it be so that it'll become abundant, and then you can take some later. But yeah, I'll go into it. There's quite a bit to like traditional ethics around harvesting wild plants. Some things that you wouldn't probably think to consider as well. So I'm going to make a separate video on that sometime soon. And anyway, yeah, unless I encounter something else along the path here as I'm headed back, that's kind of what I was seeing out this way today. Oh yeah, I almost forgot a couple of guys. Road dusters. This is, of course, grasshopper season, grig season. Lots of adult grasshoppers of all different species around. One of the ones that you don't see much of earlier in the summer are the big ones that are called road dusters, the bigger grasshoppers here. So I noticed there's a lot of those guys around today, as well as more of the bronzed tiger beetles on the trail beside the river, more of them than I've ever seen. in one place at one time. Tiger beetles are really cool. They're really like vicious little trail beetles. They like open spaces, and they watch out for insects and stuff that are crossing the trails, and then they fly and leap and grab them and eat them. There's kind of actually a trade in tiger beetles as pets, because a lot of people like to keep them in terrariums and introduce things like ants and that kind of thing and watch them fly over and grab them and eat them. But we have several types of tiger beetles here in southern Alberta. They all have, most of them have really cool designs and colorations and this kind of a thing, and they're just a wicked looking little insect when you see them up close. But if you're just walking down the trail, for most people, they don't even notice that they're there, because they think they're just flies moving up and down the trail. Because of course, if you're not cautious, as soon as you approach the tiger beetle, it's going to fly away from you, right? And they're small, so people just, I think, perceive them as flies, and people don't care about flies for whatever reason. So they don't notice the tiger beetles, the really cool tiger beetles in the midst. Okay, so I promised to demonstrate how to prepare and preserve chokecherries the old-fashioned way. So what you need is a mortar and pestle kind of a setup. Doesn't have to be fancy like this one, right? So you could have just an old kitchen chair and a hammer, and you use the old kitchen chair as your flat surface, and the hammer to smash, right? But you need something to break the chokecherries. Could be a rock, could be a stick, could be a hammer, could be whatever you want, right? Some people make this, it's called Sspopiikimi, what I'm going to make in Blackfoot. Sspopiikimi. It's a crushed chokecherry, and some people will do it nowadays with a blender. Just throw it into a blender and let the blender go for a while, or one of those smoothie makers. They work pretty good. Or a lot of people prefer the meat grinder, putting the berries into the meat grinder and grinding them through. I find that with unless you're using something like the NutriBullet or something that's made to smash up nuts and things into little tiny bits, putting it into a blender, putting it into a meat grinder doesn't take down the pits as well as when you're smashing them on something like this. So I still prefer, if I have the time, to just do it this way, okay? The really old-fashioned crushing way. So you should hear that nice little pop as the pits go. It's a little bit of a messy work. And you just want to smash all the chokecherries. Make sure you smash them good. Smash the pits good. You can add some as you're breaking it down. You're always some are gonna fly out, those back in the mix. Okay, so what you're left with, this stuff here, this mush, this is what's called Sspopiikimi, and this is a traditional delicacy in Blackfoot. You put it in your mouth and you just kind of roll it around with your tongue and you swallow it. You don't chew, because you got all the little pits of the seeds and stuff in here, all the little pieces. And if you want to preserve it, what you do is like this. You make yourself a patty. Okay? It's like a hamburger patty type of a thing. And then watch, I'll show you. If I bring it over here, just lay it somewhere where I can put it in the sun to dry, like this. I'll just leave that for a day to dry up. Maybe even a couple of days, depending on the day, depending on like how warm and stuff the day is. Usually it just takes 24 hours. Dry it up, and yeah, you can keep that year round, and then just rehydrate it when you want to eat the paste, the Sspopiikimi paste. So yeah, it's a bit of a messy job. You might want to use like some kind of plastic glove or something like that, so you're not getting your hands all berry juiced and everything like me. But yeah, that's about it. That's about all there is to it. You just smash it up and eat it in that smashed paste form. There is this kind of like cyanic acid, this low-level cyanic acid in there, and what people say is that that low-level cyanic acid may have acted like a kind of what do you call it? A preventative medicine for cancers. That there's some quality to it where you don't get oddball cells growing out of control if you regularly have Sspopiikimi in your diet. I don't know, but I know it's good for you, and I know that it cleans you out because it's got all that roughage moving through. So there you have it. Traditional Sspopiikimi and how to create it.